Hey everybody, welcome to BrickVault. Today I get to show you a couple of amazing creations, Lego creations that have come from the designer Nicola Stacci. This is an expansion to his Mad Max themed builds. We have the Elvis and also the Nux car. Like every vehicle in the universe of Mad Max Fury Road, each one of them has a unique kind of personality, backstory, history, and there is no vehicle that exists in this world that isn't heavily modified in order to survive in the rough desert environment. You might recognize Nux's car as the one he was originally driving out on the war party. That's where Mad Max was actually strapped to it in the front. And the Elvis is one of those smaller vehicles that would guard the war rig when making runs. They're built at the same scale as the Giga Horse as well as the war rig that also came from the same designer. And just like those two larger builds, you can find the instructions for these at our web store, www.brickvault.toys. Included is the PDF step-by-step building instructions as well as a digital parts list so you can quickly and easily order all the parts that you're going to need online. And purchasing instructions is an absolutely amazing way to help support us here at the channel as well as the designers that we work with like Nicola. It's definitely worth taking a closer look at the high quality builds that we have in our web store. It's all linked in the description below, but let's get into the builds now. Let's take a closer look and let's start off with the Elvis. It gets its name by the original designer and builder of the car in real life, not within universe. It was built by Ian Elvis Davis from Rod Bods Down Under, and the actual design was fleshed out in 2008. This is a 1932 Ford Coupe with an extended chassis and a V12 twin-six GMC 702 cubic inch petrol motor, a massive engine to say the least. Because this thing has so much power and it is relatively small, this was used probably as the primary interceptor for anything that would mess with the convoy, and that's what you do see in the movie. These guys engage the enemy, I don't remember the name of that group, that go on and attack the war rig, but the Elvis is, I think, the first one to actually engage. Now, when it comes to the detailing of this model, there's a few things that I really like about it. First off, this car is supposed to be completely rusted out, so the brown I think matches up very well. And then Nicola does the shape of the hot rod body justice, I think, making it pretty much a totally studless build and putting those smooth curved slope bricks to good use when fleshing out especially the back of that hot rod. When you're taking a closer look at the back, you can see that there are a couple of flexi tube pieces that have been cut down to size in order to make what I think are handle grips. That's where you can have one of the war boys standing on the back and they can hold on to the sides when, of course, they're not holding on to the machine gun. I don't know how many times you're going to see a classic 1930s coupe hot rod mounted with a machine gun, but I think personally it looks pretty darn good. And then when you get to the front of the build, it's actually constructed in kind of a funny way. When you look at the bottom, you can see some longer bar pieces that are attached to some Technic connectors, and that really is the exposed chassis right there. What's interesting here is that the natural weight of the model bends those bars just a little bit, so you can see the engine is canted back slightly, and of course the grille in the front is angled back ever so slightly as well. Now, this is actually a natural look for the Elvis, which is great. Taking a look at some of the artwork and some of the pictures, this is pretty much how the car would be. The engine would actually be slightly tilted back, and of course the grille would follow suit. When you roll it back and forth, you can kind of bounce it up and down, and it almost acts as kind of a little bit of a shock system. I'm not entirely sure how intentional that was for the builder, or maybe it was just a happy accident, but I think it actually works to serve the model better. The build for the engine is absolutely massive. If you can't tell already, it's got two sets of intakes, which is insane. It's a twin engine, and a couple of builds for double exhausts on either side. If you want, you can bend the entire front engine and grille totally forward, and you can see how that connection works there. This is just sort of a fun thing to do where you can see the engine a little bit better, and it really goes to show that you don't need too much in terms of brick in order to create a pretty solid body. I think this thing rides around really well. When it comes to the interior of the model, you can open up both the doors. They actually open up very wide, which is is nice, but you can't see too well on the inside, so I'm just going to break the top off, which is pretty easy to do. And what you've got is a single seat, a steering wheel, and of course a sidearm in case you get into any type of violent situation, as a lot of these characters designers often do, or pretty much do the entire time this movie is happening. And with that, let's jump on to Nux's car. At first glance, you might think that these are the same body, just modified in a different way, but no, this is not a Ford. We in fact have a Chevrolet 5-window coupe from 1934. So pretty much the same time period, different company, and ultimately slightly different dimensions all around. Of course, they scale with each other, which is great, but the main difference here, at least in terms of how the frame works, is you can see there's some extra windows in the back, why it's called a 5-window coupe. And while the Elvis has the old suicide doors where they would open the other way, these actually open the regular way. Outside of that, there's plenty of differences though. You can see some wheel wells towards the front, some extra suspension in the back, which actually raises the body forward, and larger wheels. So, like the Elvis, let's take a look at the back of the vehicle first. It is set up in a similar way where you have those flexi tubes attached to either side of the back that can be used as handles. There's an extra bit of attachment here, which Nicola used those black hot dog pieces to use. I don't exactly know what those handles are for. They might just be easier handles to grab the back when you want to climb in the back of the car. And then of course there's some studs there so you can place minifigures or other larger brick-built figures, which I think would scale slightly better with what we have here. And then you can see flags, and we also have some more of those explodey spike tip spears. I don't remember the names of those. I'm sure they have a name for them in universe though. No mounted machine gun on the top, but when you take a look at the interior, you can just break the roof off like the last one. There is a nitro bottle in the back, which is nice to see. You also get a seat, steering wheel, and gun like the last car, but there's also that crow bobblehead, which is a nice little Easter egg if you're familiar with the intro scene when he's first driving this car. Now, I mentioned before the doors open in the normal fashion, and just like how the exhaust would connect in real life, roughly speaking, the triple pipes that shoot off of either side actually break away when the doors open and close. Now, jumping towards the front, you can see the engine, which is completely different, of course, from the Elvis, and I don't know what the stock engine was for this type of car or what the designers decided to use for it within the making of the movie, but needless to say, it's a pretty massive beast of an engine all around with a few extra details on either side. It's not actually totally symmetrical. The only thing I really can identify here is that wheel piece, that little tire that you can see on the inside should be the timing belt. And what's kind of fun here is if you want to see that grille in the front, you can just pop off this bit of spiked detailing in the front just so you can see what that grille looks like without the modification. Now, normally the Nux car does have this attached though. You can see a few more of those little explodey spikes. A skull, that's where you'd put Mad Max, where he was attached to in the front when you saw him in the beginning. Technically, the neck bracket is there so you can fit the minifigure, though like I said in the beginning, and every time I talk about some of these larger Mad Max cars, they are upscaled so he does look a little small. At some point it would be actually kind of fun for us to make some brick-built figs. Just like the Elvis, when you lift the car up and down or when you're kind of riding it back and forth, you can see that the front bends in just a little bit because there is a similar connection with those bar pieces used to kind of flesh out the front of this vehicle, though it's slightly less exaggerated. I think the engine actually runs into the body a little bit earlier, so you don't get quite as much bend in the Nux car as opposed to the Elvis. Either way though, I gotta say, when handling both of these cars, they feel pretty solid. Obviously, you can see these tiny little spike pieces kind of jutting out. Anything that you see that is small sticking out can pop off, of course, pretty easily. Most of it is just clipped in by one little clip. The cross piece in the front of the Nux car is, I think, just studded in by one stud. So for a custom build, I think it's pretty standard in terms of, okay, extremities can pop off, but the main solid chunks of the body of the build, they are very, very strong. There's nothing, I don't think, that would pop out to you as being overwhelmingly delicate. In fact, they feel pretty strong and very casual to move around. Of course, I've got to show all of these guys together now. We've got the War Rig, the Giga Horse, and of course these two small cars. I have a feeling that Nicola might be working on more vehicles to flesh out the Mad Max universe. And if that is something that you want to see, please let us know in the comment section below what types of cars from Mad Max you might want to see Nicola build next. He's also working on other stuff. And in general, let us know what kinds of designs you want to see on the channel. Guys, if you have stuck around in this video this long, thanks so much for hanging out. If you enjoy our content, you can always like or subscribe. Check out our web store where you can find the building instructions. That is www.brickvault.toys. And thanks again for watching. We will see you next time at BrickVault.